Kim Best, amazing filmmaker, yet again, for the eighth time. You have two films in the New York Cat Film Festival. It's really quite remarkable to me because I get 50, 60, 70 submissions, and I look at them all on the basis of how does that make me feel? How's that going to make an audience feel? Are they going to laugh? Are they going to think? Are they going to cry? Are they going to scratch their heads? And you wind up every year making at least two, I accept two of them, films that are completely different from each other. You are a professional filmmaker and a professional other things as well. You're a multi-talented woman. When you set out to make and then submit films to the Cat Film Festival, do you think, what is it that inspires you? I want it to inspire other people. Sometimes you just have an inner thought process and you impose that on the cat and on the story you tell. Other times you're an amazing documentarian. You go out into the field and you tell somebody else's story in a completely different way. It's not a cat talking and being philosophical, intellectual, and a lot of your films, I always say the film festival is appropriate for people of all ages, but a lot of Kim Best films are going to go right over the head of little kids. It's let's talk about Walden Pond or something. So when you set out to do it, do you just follow your own whimsy, or do you think, okay, this one I haven't thought in this way before on film?
Yeah, my background is doing documentary film as I tend to scan the horizon for things having to do with not only cats, but other things that are quirky or particular about something somebody's done. However, over time now, because I have turned my attention more and more to cats, because they amuse me and inspire me, people come to me sometimes with ideas. For
Oh.
example, one of the films that you have accepted graciously this year has to do with a woman in Pittsburgh, North Carolina, who has a cat refuge. And a friend of mine told me about her, and otherwise I would not have known about her. So in that way, the stories sometimes come to me. In terms of the more comedic types of things that I've turned my attention to over time, and especially during the pandemic where I couldn't go out and actually interview people in person as easily, I spent a lot of time hiking and just thinking about various things. And when you do that, when you give yourself space just to have curious things drift up into your consciousness, things come up. And yeah, for example, for the other film that I submitted and you're screening this year, it was a matter of something I've been thinking about for a while, and it gradually, the concept developed as I was hiking. And I used AI to generate images around that. I have a slightly different approach now and more latitude in how I approach making films, not just documentary, but also the AI generated imagery.
It's extraordinary to be able to embrace new technology in a way that enhances the skills and the vision you already had. People think of AI as maybe some kind of a scary overlord that's going to take over everything. In the hands of a creative person, it becomes putty. It becomes something that you can sculpt something different out of. Let's talk about the two films. The first one, Pause and Purpose, is as pure a documentary as anyone could ever hope to see. And your main character, I guess in a documentary, character is not the right word, but the woman who runs the refuge is just a documentary filmmaker's dream. Talk about her and this amazing goat refuge that's also a cat refuge.
So this is a film about Siglinda Scarpa. And when I interviewed her, she was, and this was back in November, she was 84 years old. She has an incredible backstory, but to begin with, she's the founder of a refuge called the Goathouse Refuge. And it's because she bought property, 16 acres of land in North Carolina, outside of Pittsburgh, North Carolina, many years ago. And when she bought the land, there were two goats that were living there. And she could have sent them on their way, but she decided that that was their home. So she decided to keep them. And that sort of was a trigger for people to start bringing animals to her place just because she was so friendly with the goats. But in any case, it evolved over time where she got to be known as being an animal advocate. And it reached a point where she decided that, in particular, cats were what she wanted to embrace as a mission. And so she founded the Goathouse Refuge in 2007. And since that time, they have found homes for, it's hard to say exactly, but maybe 3,000 cats.
It's
And at any one
a
time,
big
they're
number. That's a woman on a kind of remote farm by
right.
herself and 3,000 cats. And that's not to mention the ones that are permanent residents. It's an amazing accomplishment. You've followed many wonderful cat rescuers and refuges, like Harold the Catman, who you've made two films about that have been in the festival. You're very familiar with people who see this as a mission and bring it to life. She's quite different. Now she's old, but she was even younger. She was by herself managing a lot of animals in outdoor pens and stuff. It's a lot of work, right?
Yeah, she actually has a staff and she has a lot of
Good.
volunteers.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
because
We
it
don't
would
want to
be
wear her
impossible.
out.
Yeah, it would wear her out definitely. But her backstory is really fascinating, and it gives some insight into her to know that she grew up in Italy around the time of World War II. And her parents were partisans, and as a result of that, the Gestapo came to try to grab her father. And she and her family, her mother, her brother, her grandmother fled to the mountains near the Alps, Mount Blanc. They lived out in the woods basically, and it was not a comfortable existence. They were really in fear of their lives of being picked up by the Gestapo. And she also, I think, she herself says she had autism. And so, in those conditions, that context, and given her just personality, she was unable to talk. She just didn't talk to anybody. And after the war ended, her father actually was elected to the parliament of Italy.
Me chills, you
Yeah,
know.
he was a commanding character, but she was still in her isolationist pod. And one night he happened to bring home to her a little frozen kitten that he had found outside, and he put it under the sheets with her. And she just cuddled it. And she said the next few days, the kitten was trying to say something, I want food or whatever. And she found herself having to translate for the kitten so the
Wow.
human beings would understand. And by that, in that situation, she started to talk. So the kitten was like her entryway into the social life. And so that's one part of it. Another, she became interested in pottery and she mentored under a famous sculptor, a potter in Italy. She actually was a film editor for a time in Italy. So when I went to interview her, I was ready to tell her how to sit and everything. She said, "Oh, I know the process and everything." So it made her interesting and easy to interview. But in any case, she also said that she's had 9 lives because
Mm.
she left Italy. She went to Greenwich Village, New York City, and worked as a potter there in a studio. Then she traveled around the country. And ultimately, one of her trips, she went to Hawaii and she was
Oh,
meditating. And Halikala, I believe was the name of the place. And she had a vision, basically. It was a revelation. And she said it was almost like light entered her soul. And she realized that her purpose in life was to be equal and recognize her equality with all creatures, that being human was not special. It was like all
wow.
the animals were there. So at that point, she really did devote herself to this idea of trying to make some animals' lives better. So when
Mhm.
I went to interview her, not only were there an incredible number of cats living in the refuge, but also in her house everywhere. But she had, let's see, 5 dogs. She had 30 chickens. She had 2 turkeys. She had goats. And all of them lived together peaceably.
Yeah,
It's like a huge commune for
yeah.
these animals. Yeah.
It's an amazing story, and she is an extraordinary woman. And the fact that she had been at Greenwich Village at one time, I'm already thinking, oh, how do we get her to come to the film festival and see the movie about her with an audience that would applaud you and applaud her at the same time? I want to back up a minute because politics is so relevant in all of our lives and something we don't want to think about too much or talk about too much because it's just so divisive. But I'd like you to talk to the extent that you can about what it was like for her father to be a partisan, because I don't think Americans understand that in France there was an underground fighting against the government, and that a partisan in Italy was fighting against the fascist government of Mussolini.
Correct.
To the extent that you can, neither of us is a historian. I want people to understand that things that are happening in our history have happened in previous histories. And this man who had the courage to stand up with a small band of others in hidden ways, resisting an authoritarian fascist dictator, winds up later becoming elected to parliament. There is hope for humans when things seem hopeless. And these people had to endure extraordinary hardship, not just the fear at any time of being taken away, but how to survive. Now, we don't have that in modern society. We can still get food and drink, if you will, and perhaps shelter. But can you speak to that a little? I think it's important to understand that a woman of 84 who's doing this beautiful St. Francis type work has a long arc of a history with a family in a condition that is something that we could perhaps think about or relate to or salute.
I don't know the particulars beyond what I've told you, except that she did go on at some length about when they had to flee their house.
Mhm.
And it was a very narrow escape. And when they got up to Mont Blanc, she said her father was very commanding. He was very demanding and commanding. And it was a hardship to her because he would say, "You need to learn how to ski." And she said she was so scared of skiing. But she said, I was more scared of my father because he was such a determined person. And he always told me, you need to be a tough cookie. And she said that went with me all my life. Some people criticize me as being a really tough cookie because I tend to be stern. I speak my mind. I say directly what I believe. I don't lie. And sometimes that can seem very harsh to some people, that directness. But in part, I think she got that from her father. And she said he would make her like go on very long walks with him. I think it was to develop a sense of determination and perseverance and resilience in his
Yes,
very young daughter. So,
especially if they had to flee again.
yeah.
I mean,
And
they'd be in that position. He wanted her to have survival skills.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
I just think it's important that when you say partisan, most Americans are not familiar with what happened in Europe during World War II, and the fact that in every country there was resistance to dictatorship and fascism and oppression. So those were very brave people, and the French resistance has been celebrated in various books and in movies against the Nazi regime in that case, which took over the French government. So I just think it's important that we see what we're living through in a historical context and see this woman who has evolved through personal determination and passion for animals to being this savior. And I personally think being a tough cookie is what it's all about. Unfortunately, I'm just as direct and blunt and frank. And yeah, people can take offense, but it's never meant offensively. And I just think she's an incredible story of survival. So that's Pause and Purpose. And the movie doesn't have all in it that you've just told us, which is just wonderful. So I hope people will get to the film festival premiere in New York on October 26th. Meet Kim Best, who, by the way, has on her own dime come to New York City for every film festival. And I believe she would, even if she didn't have one and then often two films in it. She's getting a new special award this year, but that is not the carrot and the stick. That is simply, I know you already are planning on coming. And there's a Pooch and Pussycat party the afternoon before, so you can come and visit with Kim. And also, there's going to be a pet psychic and sketch artists. Whether you have your dog with you, which they're welcome, or you have a photo of your cat, all that is going to be on board. Your second movie couldn't be more different. It's called When Left is Right, and it's about Southpaws, and it's full of information because you are always informative while being whimsical and creative. So tell about the AI generation of this kitten.
Yeah, basically, it was the concept for it was like I told you before that when I hike, I have
Yes, I
concepts
love that.
showed
Yeah.
up, and I became aware of the fact that animals have a preference for one side or the other, not just human beings. Crabs, octopi, cats do. And when I found that out, I thought that would make a really interesting type of almost documentary narrative type of thing if I could find a left-pawed cat to film or something, but I never really succeeded in doing that because it's not very obvious. I came up with this concept of a young cat who's having an identity crisis, basically, because it becomes aware of the fact that it's left-pawed. And in human beings, it's quite a minority. It's 10% of human beings are left-handed.
Yeah.
And in cats, it's 40%, so it's not the
Wow.
same. But with human beings, left-handedness is associated with certain attributes that are good, like precision and creativity and better rhythm, better athletic performance, some
Oh,
things. And so that's good, but it's still stigmatizing because it's only 10% of the population. Now, with cats, like I said, 40% are determined to be, well, 30 to 40% left pawed. And I guess they share perhaps some of those attributes, but they've research studies have shown that they tend to be more vigilant and more anxious in general. I use that sort of as the idea, the concept that this little kitten is indeed pretty anxious and he thinks that he attributes it to his left pawedness and everything. And he seeks out a therapist to help him with that. So the thing about it was, how do you show that? And very much with the help of my son, who's very tech inclined and much more aggressive with AI types of things than I could hope to be. He led me through the process of trying to generate images and then videos of to show this as well as tell it and generating narration and that sort of thing. So it was very much fun to do that, I have to say, and I still continue to say that because I continue to make short films AI generated to some extent, that it requires a lot of patience and
yeah,
fortitude because you try 40 prompts to get one image. It's very
really.
time
I
consuming.
know nothing about it. I don't even use ChatGPT. I don't even use anything, just not because I'm against it, because there's a learning curve. And some of us are more the old horse, the old ways. I only know how to get to the barn the way I know how to get to the barn. I salute you for embracing it and working through that challenge and not seeing it as hopeless or frustrating, although it might be frustrating. But it doesn't hurt to have this adult son to help. He is a fascinating man from what I've known about you over all these 8 years, and he's lived in many different places doing really interesting, various kinds of work. But now you have him home for a little while. I guess he's recharging his battery. Talk about how he's helping with your 17-year-old kitty, because I think it's important for people to know the kinds of challenges we have with our aging pets and how a support system can make it possible for us to do it without feeling overwhelmed. So, what are the challenges at the moment?
Yeah. So our cat, his name is Nube, and it's Spanish word for cloud because he's an all-white cat. He has heterochromatic eyes. He has one blue eye, one green eye. So he's
Very,
quite handsome.
oh, yeah,
And my son calls the cat his brother because they are co-joined in some ways, emotionally, spiritually. And Nube, however, as he's aged, has come up with problems that are pretty typical of cats, mainly kidney problems.
yeah,
And so he has required a lot of care. That includes nausea medicine, blood pressure medicine. He has to have sub-Q fluids every 4 days or so to help with that. And in that respect, it's very important for my son and myself to work as a team, one to hold the cat, one to use the fluids. And of course, we give him treats afterwards. So he's trained to anticipate really tasty treats afterwards. So he actually submits to these interventions better than you would think. Yeah, it I'd have to say it's a very welcome routine to do this every day, even though it's painful
love,
to have to see the cat not being the cat that he was 5 years ago, whatever. But it feels very satisfying to be able to take care of him to the best of our abilities. And as a team, it really binds us together, I believe.
yes. I think it's a really good way of putting it. And I think it's important for people to understand that in some ways it is a pleasure and a privilege to be able to care for our aging pets. And that used to be true of our aging parents. And we don't do that so much in our society. The aging parents tend to go someplace where there's a staff, if they can be afforded, that take
Right.
care of them in different ways because we have busy lives and also we haven't grown up with the idea that a family remains a kind of nuclear unit that takes care of each other. So we do it with our pets. And I think it gives us that sense of caretaking and the passage of time and the acknowledgement of some of the gracious parts of aging and the things to appreciate about aging. I will say that now that I know about the kidney disease, which happens to all cats as they age, even the ones who've been fed properly and fed all wet food all their lives. This is what happens to cats as they age. Their kidneys begin to fail and then more so even. So I have two sponsors of my shows that I'm going to ask to send you some things. One of them is Fera Pets. It's owned and founded, and all the products are created by a wonderful holistic veterinarian, feline. She does a lot of feline work called Michelle Dulake, and it's called Fera Pets. And they have three supplements just for cats. And one is an immune supplement, and they're all made from organic botanicals based on Chinese and Western medicine. And they have one for kidney support. And my sister has little dogs, one of whom now has kidney problems. And so it gets the canine kidney support. So that is just something that will help the body detoxify and work its way through. So that's going to be my gift to the star of many of your movies. But also, Creamy is the best treat for afterwards. It's a lickable made by Catit. And a lot of the people that have now been trying it find that it's really great for positive reinforcement of either behavior, get off the counter, or cats for adoption that they're trying to make more socialized, but particularly, and also for picky cats that are having trouble eating even a tasty diet, although kidney diets have to be lower, somewhat lower in protein, not as low as doctors used to think. But it'll be the perfect thing to give him for his treat because it's hydrating and delicious, and it comes in a kind of a lickable little pouchy tube. So those are the little gifts I can give you, a small token towards his wellness. He is very beautiful, and he continues to be. He isn't in either of your films this year, but I think you're probably going to cook up another one sometime soon for next year with him as the star. That little white face with those two different colored eyes. I mean, born to be a movie star, don't you think?
Yes, indeed. And Tracie, I have to say, thank you very much for thinking about sending these little gifts to him. But I would say that probably what he's going to appreciate most is the boxes that they come in. And as we know, cats love boxes, and we have a whole collection of boxes now because we watch him closely. It's like it's something we do. It's how we invest our one and only precious lives. We watch the cat boxes
Well,
according
I
to
think
the
that's
mood.
fabulous. A movie that you just had in this past year's festival was about the various cat toys. It's one of the funniest, and I get emails from people saying that was so funny. A voiceover of lots of phone calls to customer service for various toys, which the cat wasn't interested in or that broke down. And it's Eeyore back in Winnie the Pooh when, to me, I always remember this, that the honey pot, Winnie ate all the honey out, so there wasn't any for Eeyore the donkey, and the balloon broke. But he really enjoyed putting the balloon in the empty honey pot. And I think of that as cats with boxes. Never mind what it came in. The box is everything. He's a wonderful example of the true catnitude of a cat. And I
Uh-huh.
can't wait for people to meet you. Yet again, those of you who've come every year to the Cat Film Festival, Kim will be there again. And we'll all be together watching your wonderful movies and all the others. And just keep on hiking. Keep on hiking. There are people who get their great ideas while driving, others while they're in the shower, but hiking is better for you than either of those things. So I recommend hiking for creative evolvement because that's what works for you. Bess, you're amazing. You are the best. And I can't wait to see you again very soon and have everyone get a chance to see your beautiful movies.
Same to you, Tracie. I look forward to getting together again in person.
Take
Yeah.
care. Thanks
Okay.
again for your time.